We know the result of ignorance and greed in human behavior and in human society. We're not yet fully aware of the result of knowledge, consciousness, and generosity. So that's the moment in history where we are. It's possible to rehabilitate large-scale damaged ecosystems. That's a huge, huge understanding. We can choose consciousness and generosity. And if we do that, we are on the flourishing path.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Liu, and today I'm with Jason and Bob and Anne Lefoucault of Integrity for the Future. We've just had a wonderful conversation for her podcast, and then we invited her to join us on the Flourishing Path. So, Anne, welcome.
Thank you, John.
So,
hi, John. Hi, Anne.
Hi.
And Jason, are you still mobile there?
Yeah, I'm here. Good to see you all.
Mhm.
So, Anne, you're working on integrity for the future. Can you explain how you came about this and what you expect this to do?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a big question because it's a big project. It's really about humanity. It's about humankind. And it took me a while to go big like that. It was like, no, you cannot do that. Who are you to explain the world, what has to be going on? But in my work as a trauma therapist, I come very close to people, and I realized what I sensed before, but I could really feel, no, there is something very trustable in our species. We are a trustable species. This is what I see, even with all the damage out there. So how come that the world looks like it looks like? And to really go deep with this question, and also with my own ambivalence as a trauma therapist, because I love my work. I like to support people to come back on their path if they experience something difficult in their life. But so many people come because they are really suffering from the structures they live in, from the world they do live in. Yeah. So I had the feeling of, okay, I'm kind of contributing to this world if I just do the healing work. And that was a point where I had to stop my trauma work for a while and just go deep and listening. And then maybe the same as it was for you, John, it came in the night, yeah, in a dream. The term integrity showed up. And in the very night, I just woke up and booked the how do you call it, the URL? The website, yeah, I was looking up, is there something about integrity in the internet? And I can tell you, I didn't find a lot. I was convinced, oh, there must be, yeah, many things showing up. If I put the word integrity in, there's not so much showing up. So that was a moment 1.5 years ago. And from this moment on, I'm on this track and trying to fill this project with life, and trying also to find ways where I'm not moralizing, but inviting. Yeah. So as a beginning.
Well, Bob and Jason are part of the work at the land, and Unconditional Freedom is part of that. Would you guys like to share your thoughts on integrity with Anne and everyone on the Flourishing Path?
Yeah, would be wonderful.
Sure, I'd love to. It's interesting because for probably the last 20 years, I think integrity has meant something along the lines of like, can I be somebody that's trustable and upstanding, and can people rely on me? I take those things maybe seriously to a fault. I guess that's a skill that, that really I had to learn, because it was something that didn't necessarily come out of out of my childhood, or I didn't have, it wasn't part of my upbringing necessarily. And so I had to learn things, in my 20s, like late 20s, I guess, like responsibility and integrity, and and those sort of things. And then we were actually watching your your Instagram feed before we got on with you. One of the guests had taken that word back to integral, and talked about the definition of integral being a part of. And that really, like, I guess, opened my heart, maybe in a way, because it points to our existing in a life system together, which I think encapsulates a lot of John's work, and and what we're doing in the Earth program as part of Unconditional Freedom, that Jason and I are doing too, which is, how do we as human beings learn to live in harmony with our natural surroundings and with each other? And so I love that part of integrity, which is like, we're part of a living system. And so then how do we allow that living system to flourish? And or how do we be a part of it? And so I think a lot of our work is figuring out, and I think this is similar to what you're doing in trauma. It's like, how do we remove some of the obstacles and blocks that would have us being a part of this, this living system?
Yeah, and just to continue on that thread, I think in our modern culture, we've lost many times the essence of what some of these words meant, or used to mean, or their origin, their etymology, and they've become something of a tool of our modern day culture more than what their original meaning was. For example, genius. So genius used to mean a attendant spirit that someone was born with, that it wasn't something like how smart or not smart you are. It had nothing to do with some permanent inherent quality. It had to do with your relationship with that spirit, that attendant spirit that you lived with, that like inspired you. And it was something that you could lose or that you could gain based on your ability to relate. And I think integrity is another word and another sort of essence, sort of timeless essence. And I think your story of how it came to you is so cool, that in our modern culture, it's become something of sort of like a bar that you measure yourself against, of like, do I have integrity? Do I not have integrity? And then it becomes moralistic, like you were saying, like it's not something you want to be moralistic, but it's actually, as I understand it, and I'm seeing these videos that you're describing, it's more about that relationship and cultivating that relationship with the whole. And so the integral and integrity of the whole, which is very different than sort of this modern, very objectifying relationship of like, all right, this is what I need to keep up with and who I need to be, versus the sort of dynamism that I actually am, or the world actually is.
Thank you, Jason. Can I just pick up on that one? It was so beautiful how you treated on the term genius. And I think that's very close to what I mean when I talk about soul integrity, because integrity can easily be confused. I had people who came up to me and said, what do you mean with integrity? I can be in integrity with my company, but the company can, be very far away from my personal values. And then I started thinking, what do I mean when I talk about integrity? And I think it's very close to what you just described as this genius, as something that we just know in our, I don't know where it is for you, in our guts, in our heart, or wherever, yeah. So this is why became more precise with this term soul integrity. I think there is something in us we can relate to as human beings.
That's really cool. Maybe I'll just add one more thing. We have a program we go into different prisons. I think it's over
close to 90 at this
it's close
point.
to 90 at this point, and in the thousands of inmates. And we provide this program called Art of Soul Making.
Really?
And so I love this word soul so much. And it's something we're playing with too, of like what, like letting the meaning and the true essence of what that means sort of flower of itself. But it also struck me in those videos that you would use that word, that there's something so essential to us that we can get connected with, and that it can guide our life. And that's what that program is about, that we're putting into those institutions, is and why it's called Art of Soul Making, and why we're using that word soul. It's so funny to then find other people using the same word for the same experience, but from the experience of it versus the kind of like a set idea of what it is.
Well,
wow.
Beautiful, wonderful. You know what I'm triggered by all of this is that, like, there's magic in the air or something, that we're all being called to do something, and it's something which we need to do and that needs to be done, and that is of mutual benefit for all people and for all living things and for future generations. And it's so special, and it seems different than, like, if you turn on the news or you read the newspaper or you listen to the radio, but the other thing that I also think is, I have been to so many countries and covered so many big news stories and been in all kinds of cultures, and actually the majority of people are great, and it's just wonderful. There's no, why isn't that what is manifesting in the development? Please think about those things, or share your thoughts on that. Anne, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, you're asking for the origin or the reason why, yeah, people are great, or the majority is great, and still the world looks like it looks like. I think that we are not really aware of the basic function of our nervous system. It's kind of not, I find it in my trauma therapy, but I don't find it in the society as a knowledge, as something you know about yourself as a single human being. How is my nervous system working? And our nervous systems, they want to be in safety. And there's a very beautiful quote from Stephen Porges, who is doing a great work on that. He's saying, if you want to improve the world, start by making people feel safer. And for me, that goes really deep, to stop blaming people for what they are doing, but to really go to the root, to the cause. We want to feel safe. And there are different ways to feel safe. You can try to control or to avoid. So you are really, acting, but you kind of step out of what you described, John, as a natural, the organic. It's more like a fighting. And safety is also possible in relationship, but that is quite not true for many people because they experience differently. Yeah, they grew up in maybe families where relationship have not been safe. Yeah, where you couldn't trust the other person, and we have so many examples now in our world where people are not trustable. So we choose the other way to control. But as human species, we have, over the time of the evolution, developed capacity or capability to relate, to cooperate, and to choose that if our nervous system is not interfering. Yeah. So this is why I think trauma work is so important, or at least to be aware of how our nervous system is functioning. And that brings us beyond judging. If I meet someone and it's a strange behavior and against life, and I become aware, oh, there is a nervous system that is seeking for safety and don't find another way than this one, I can relate differently. I can offer another kind of safety. So this is a perspective that I would like to bring in from as a trauma therapist. And for me, this is basic knowledge about us. Yeah, and it's somehow forgotten. John, I don't know if you are aware of cultures where this is more alive as a shared knowledge. Yeah.
So you're really talking about compassion then. Like if you see someone who is in pain, and this is something that lately there has been quite a lot of talk about trauma.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of people who have been, well, maybe the whole population of the world has been somewhat traumatized by the pandemic and all the different events. But I started to notice that I was very empathetic and that I could feel how other people were feeling. But I also started to get worried about being overly empathetic, because if I began to absorb all of their sorrows, but I couldn't deal with it, then I would be in this terrible depression, which they were already experiencing. So I couldn't help them. I was now taking on their sadness and sorrow. And then I realized that there was a difference between empathy and compassion. And that if I could look at them with compassion, but stay above the feeling of despair, that it was another level. And that was a better place, because I didn't go into the misery, but I understood them. I felt their pain, but I didn't become incapacitated by their trauma. And can you talk a little bit more about this? Because I think this is a huge theme at this particular time. Trauma seems to be everywhere. How did it, is it different now, or has it always been that way?
Yeah, it's maybe not easy to say, but I think trauma is accumulating if we don't take care of it. So we have a lot of things to take care of by over the time. Yeah, there's intergenerational trauma, and I think it's also having an impact on our souls. Jason started to bring this term in. It's not just the biological thing. I think it's causing harm in us if we act against our deepest values, against our genius. And this is also building up. So we have a huge collection. Thomas Hübel is quite known now for his work on collective trauma. And he's comparing it on with ice. Yeah, the trauma is building up, and another layer of ice, of frozen energy, of that we cannot relate to, that is not accessible for our life also, yeah, is building up, building up, building up. This is why I'm so much in favor for doing deep work. We have to go deep, and we will touch these layers, and it might be painful, and we might also meet shame. For me, this is natural. Yeah, if a soul, on a soul level, there is a hurt, there must be shame. Somewhere there must be shame. And maybe that's funny to hear, because when I started the project, the first thing that came up for me was it could shame for future. That was the original term. But then I thought, no, I cannot come out with something like that, because shame is so, yeah, such a taboo thing. But I think it's very linked. It's very linked. There's a healthy function of shame, but because we are so much ashamed or being ashamed, it's also a power instrument to shame people. Yeah, we don't have access to this very healthy function of shame, but I think that is important. So I'm not sure if I'm still with your question, John, but I'm still with the topic, I hope. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're also then this concept of a positive impact of shame is that somebody feels sorry or feels that they shouldn't do that, and that they're compelled or encouraged to come right or make it right somehow. Isn't that the so this comes also, Jason and Bob, toward the art of soul making and being able to confront these issues. And it also can be connected to going to the worst place, to go to the places which are the most degraded, and not be afraid that, well, what can we do there? You know, like everybody wants to go to the most beautiful places, but actually we need as a civilization and as a species to go to the worst places and correct them.
Yeah, I'd love to chime in. I love what you said about needing to go to the worst place, and then also the conversation about shame. In the context of the soul making program, we talk about it is in the way of turning poison to medicine. And so in the case of taking these degraded landscapes, or going into prison and making, like, reconnecting, I guess, like ourselves, in the outside to this population that's been outcast, that's one way to look at it. And then I think the program itself is communicating that the things that led to shame, the mistakes that we have in life, like, those are actually reflective of power. It's like when you start to honor who you are and understand that life is a series of moments, and we're learning experientially through each of those moments. Obviously, like, there's certain things that that cause harm that we do, and underlying that, there is what Jason referred to as the genius, which is what you refer to as as the integrity of the soul, which is the beauty that and creativity that we all have. And so starting to honor that essence, and and saying, hey, like, you made mistakes, great. Like, I made a yesterday. I fell on my face plenty of times. And so it's starting to look at that in a way where you recognize the brilliance, and then and then start to find more better ways to express it. that bring us more into connection with, with each other and, with our community and with, with the environment. Back to what John said, I love, it's like, how do we reorient as a culture to looking at those degraded landscapes, or those places that are just actually asking for love and attention. It's really beautiful.
Mm. Thank you, Bob. I'm I'm so happy that you brought the culture in, because I mean we have a beautiful conversation here, and it's really it's such a joy. I can feel it here in my heart. And yeah, how this is a question I'm really with. How can we scale that? How can we make that experience that we share make accessible to humanity? And it's about culture. It's not only it's a one-to-one experience, but it's also about building a new culture and how to start, where to start. And speaking about culture, I have this claim. Tell me how you relate to that we can shift or change our culture of scapegoating. This is how I would describe it in a very short term. If I don't have the inner capacity to hold ambivalence and discomfort, I have to project, I have to work it out. There's no other way, yeah? So scapegoating is happening. And this is a dominant culture. So how to shift or change that culture of scapegoating into one of soul integrity? And it's really about culture. How do I grow up? Is my genius, my soul's mission, the deepest value actually when I'm born? Yeah, is it welcomed and taken care of? And are people there who are interested in asking you? I have never been asked, what did you came here for? What is your soul's mission? Yeah, it took me 40 years to start to come to the point that there is something in me that is genius in Jason's sense, and that I decided to go for that one. So, open question. Is this scalable?
I don't have a great answer for that one, because I think you do all that you can to contribute in that way, and hopefully little by little gain some friends that learn, whether it's in a large scale way, or piece by piece. But I know that John has an opinion about large scale issues.
Well, I think what I've noticed is that things are aligning, that it's not necessarily, we have choice, we have free will, but actually it's not our will that is determining things. Our choices are constrained. We have the ability to choose, but we're being called to do something. We're being called to be kind. We're being called to take care of one another. We're being called to restore the earth systems. We can choose that. Or we could say, oh no, I'm too selfish, I'm not going to do that. That's all that we have. We, go this way or go that way. We don't really have like broad things. We need to do this. We're called to do this. If we do this, things will get better. And if we don't, we already know what the result is in some ways. We were talking about that in the last episode of the Flourishing Path, that humanity has gone in directions which have led to vast deserts and billions of people losing their basic human rights, and the accumulation of vast material wealth to smaller and smaller groups. It's stunning, really. And we do have to do these things somehow, and we have to make the right choices, and we have to work together. So we have to have this large movement of humanity. Humanity has to choose. So we're not actually individuals in this case. We're part of a meta-organism. And that meta-organism, we are just cells or neural cells in that huge meta-organism. But if lots of these neural cells start firing off, going like, well, let's do the right thing, maybe that's the way forward.
Mm. Yeah, I think this is really happening now. And I'm so curious about you, Jason and Bob. I mean, you are trying to do your best, or you probably do. Could you share a little bit more about your work? I'm really curious. I mean, you mentioned this project, the art of soul making, but there's also something,
Art of Soul.
the Earth project. Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I'll talk about Art of Soul making, and you maybe talk about the prison project side of it. So this part, and I'll segue from what we were just talking about. I guess this part of the conversation is really heartbreaking to me, because I think we've engineered a culture that, emotional discomfort, how to deal with their purpose on the planet, how to live a life that is in integrity. I think inherently the system doesn't teach you to solve your problems by becoming more integrated with yourself, but rather to solve them by getting things like a cool job, or like a particular type of partner, or like this house, or like this car. Or it's a culture that deals with discomfort by acquiring things outside of ourselves to sort of bolster our sense of safety, and to take value, the inherent value that every human being has, and try to like place it outside of ourselves, that you have to get your value, and that you're feeling uncomfortable and you feel in pain, and the problem, like, the only way to get out of that is to go find your value outside yourself. And I think that there's just it's just heartbreaking. And then the opportunity is where we realign our culture with that opposite direction. Is like, when you feel pain, when you feel discomfort, you're the most valuable thing in this situation. So let's find out what's going on inside of you that has it be that you feel that way, versus trying to go fix this or that all over your life. And so then with our program, it's the sort of underlying premise of it is that people have been given a faulty map for how to live life. And so they've now ended up in situations that are wrong. I mean, because it doesn't work out to live that way. But layered on top of that is that we have a cultural shame about what all these people have done, that makes it more difficult for them to then turn inwards and figure out how to rewire their belief systems in order to then become from an integrated sense of being. And so the Art of Soul Making program is about that. It's about, it's really, I tell you, when we first took it to prisons, we thought there's no way these administrators are going to allow this programming in here, because there's paragraphs in it that says stuff like, there's a world of people out there who are judging you, who are looking down on you, who are, because of what you've done, and believe that because of what you've done, you are irredeemable into society, and you deserve to be here, and that's the way it should be. And that for you to actually find your way out of this, you have to be able to face all of that judgment and all of that condemnation for behaviors that those other people actually don't have a relationship with in themselves. So like greed is universal. And like, sure, you got caught for your greed, or like you were so greedy that you ended up in jail. But that's actually not different if you go to, the Wall Street banks in 2008, and it just wasn't, the standards are different for the people that we're talking about who are in prisons for drug offenses, and then for people who are for white collar crimes. And so people don't have a relationship with these dark aspects, shadow aspects of ourselves. And then the art of soul making is about sort of giving people a new lens who find themselves in that situation, and sort of giving them the map, hopefully a better map, to then find their way to a soulful integrity. It really is kind of the same paradigm that we're talking about. Yeah, and so it's an 8-week program, and we run it in a way that sort of fosters groups to form within the institution, so that once a person's completed the program and they feel like they've gotten something really important from it. And I can tell you, there's just such amazing stories that come out of this. There's one woman who was in our local Mendocino County jail. Her boyfriend at the time was like beating her, and they were doing drugs together, and then he kind of like convinced her, and they went and robbed the place, and then she ended up there. And then she went through the program, and she realized just how much of her own value she was putting into that relationship with that man, and sort of like brought it back to herself, and like, who is she, and what does she want, and how does she want to contribute? And she started a group at the jail, and she started, helping other women get into the program. And, one became 8, and so I think it's kind of like that. Like, I think we're all saying that too, where it's when you wake up to just even a little drop of your own sort of love and genius and capability. And we're just so talented too. And when that wakes up, just what it's able to accomplish is it's a miracle. And so I think that's different than sort of corporate ideas of scaling, where you're trying to like broadly market. I think it's kind of like 1-to-1 scaling, where we can kind of create a web of connected, heartfelt knowing that, we're in this together, and then that kind of scales underground, so to speak, or like grassroots.
Very well said.
Very well said. Wow. Jason, I think I have to do an interview with you too. I'm so impressed by your deep wisdom and knowledge, and you're really embodying the alchemy of integrity. And I'm really curious to get to know you better, and also the project, and to give it a platform, and to make it maybe even more visible. Yeah,
I'd love to. You should hear about what Bob's doing too.
Yes, I'm curious. Yes,
it's incredible.
Bob is the director of the Earth Project. So if you saw those films from the land, did we send you all the films from the land? Uh-oh.
Better do that, John.
I missed it. I'm sorry.
I can send them, or
I'll send them to you.
Okay.
But Bob, explain what you're doing both on the land and maybe the Navarro River project.
Sure. Yeah, so a group of us moved to this property in Mendocino County in Anderson Valley, which is the northern part of California. And it's 160 acres. We have redwood forest, oak woodlands, a 20-acre meadow, a garden, about a mile of river that wraps around the property. And so it's just got a really interesting mix of microclimates and, fauna and flora and animals and wildlife. And, we all came from the city in the suburbs. And so, living outdoors in this kind of setting was really foreign to all of us. But what's not foreign to us is wanting to contribute. And so, we quickly learned about the natural elements to the property and how things work. And we saw John and Kiss the Ground and the Netflix movie, and that really sparked our interest in ecosystem restoration. And then we got to know John, fortunately, and then this whole world opened up to really discovering how the nature of the property wants to function or naturally functions, and and how we can contribute to that, taking maybe some of the ways where it's grown out of balance, or previous owners on the property had. We're talking, for over 100 years, California has been cutting down, just like the rest of the world, 97% of its old growth forests. And so how can we start to build back to that place that it was before we started, taking from it? And we've done everything from, looked at things like water catchment to learning about how to allow the grass to grow, and how to assist in certain species to thrive. And we've done a lot of hugelkultur in our gardens to create a sponge in the soil, and start to look at the soil as a hugely important resource and part of this system. And how do you keep that massive amount of biodiversity in that top inch of the soil in the ground, and interacting with the different plant species? And so we've done a lot of that work, and then through, as a natural extension of that work, and us creating the art of soul making and starting to interact with prison populations and the homeless in California, we started to see the connection of how we kind of want to, as a culture, want to avoid the things that are uncomfortable. And so, or even just take for granted things, and you look at the landscapes around prisons, and they're often heavily paved and concrete, and, there's not a lot of life, and there's definitely not a lot of inspiration. And so we came up with this idea of restoring the natural landscape around these prisons. And we're starting in Mendocino County Jail, and we've been working with in the vegetable garden for a couple of years now. And we're just starting to develop this concept of a botanical sanctuary, where the inmates will not only get to learn how to improve their relationship with the environment and beautify it, and then get to experience just the physical and the psychic and emotional element of being surrounded by nature, but they'll also develop skills and get educated in this in ecology, and then that'll be something that that, like we're talking about, hopefully it sparks lights a flame in each individual, and and then as they come out of these institutions, they're in a better position to contribute something that that the world really needs. And so so in practical terms, the idea is that the inmates will will get accreditation, and will be learning how to how to do ecosystem restoration, and how to cultivate trees that that have really strong DNA and are rare and needed in restoration projects. And and our ultimate goal is to create employment opportunities for them and projects with with local and state and federal governments that that are in restoration projects, so that we can contribute on that level.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah, the work that they're doing, these guys are heroes, definitely. And the thing to do is to bring communities together where everybody is feeling this way, and that instead of acting as individuals, we realize that basically we're all the same, and we're part of this meta-organism of humanity. And humanity has a choice now, because we have sufficient knowledge to sort of understand what's happening. And we haven't been focused on this because the normative behavior in the dominant culture is powerful. And the question of how do you overcome that? How do you change? Change is, I think, the part of it, that we need to change the norms. The norms, if you talk about integrity, the norms need to be that we all act with utmost integrity, but that is not the norm. So we have to change. So that is the norm.
Yeah, I would actually, and I'm curious about Anne, I think that word like trauma is so, it seems like such a high bar for people to then sort of acknowledge kind of what's a day-to-day reality of being human on the planet right now in this time period in our culture. It's like, I would venture to say like traumatic behavior, or like scapegoating, for example, where you're externalizing your experience, like that it's normal, and it's like, but then trauma makes it sound like it's such a high bar to just acknowledge how traumatized we actually are, or how we behave. And it's, I don't know, I don't even think we've touched into how, because it's, like John was saying earlier in this talk, like you just turn on the news, or you just go into the issues of the day of like Russia invading Ukraine, like we're way, and again, trauma just makes it seem like it's something, only if really bad things happen to you or something. But it's like, it's everywhere. It's like happening all the time. It's like completely normal. It's actually the default behavior of our time period right now.
I agree, Jason. I agree. It's like that. And maybe it's hard, but I think first of all, we have to acknowledge exactly that, how it is. It's painful. You just shared, it's heartbreaking. But to make ourselves available for this heartbreaking reality, that's the truth. And I also wanted to share with you a picture that I find very inspiring and brings me hope. Can you see that?
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
I think it's from China, and the if it's broken, they put the pieces together and they do it with gold,
Oh yeah, that's right. I've seen that. It's so pretty.
So trauma happened. Yeah, everything is falling apart. Separation is just an expression. It's a phenomenon of trauma. And if we are separate, we don't feel us anymore. And then, it's going on. So it's building up. But there's always a chance to come back to integrity. And you will still see, the wounds, the memory. But something very beautiful can come out of it. So in my experience, in my personal one, I went through some pain in my life too. And I'm surrounded by people. But if you're open to face that, grace can happen. And that's actually a deepening. So sometimes the people who are suffering most, or as John is saying, we have to go to the really bad places, to the worst places. there is for me also the biggest chance to have this change and a real deepening. Yeah, people who went through suffering and experienced at some point in their life grace, like this woman. Yeah, she got to prison. That's horrible. But there she met you and had the chance to, turn the whole thing around. And I think this has a tremendous power. So trauma is not the big bad thing that is happening to us in life. Maybe trauma is also a part of life or a condition for life, for deepening, for human evolution. That's just a hypothesis of mine. But I have a very loving relationship with trauma. And you are right, Jason, in the general understanding, it's something that happens to the others, the catastrophes, major nature events. But it can be that you grow up in a family that is just not seeing you. It can be deeply traumatizing, and many people are experiencing that. So what I wanted to say, it can be even catalyze the bad situation we are in can really catalyze something new and beautiful and deep, I would say.
So we can heal our broken hearts.
For sure. For sure.
That's very good news.
Well, hey, John,
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I actually have to, I have an appointment that I have to get to, so I'm going to sign off and leave y'all with my friend Jason here.
I think we're pretty good now, so that's wonderful. I just wanted to tell you, meine Frau ist Deutsch und Cosima ist jetzt in Beijing und hat let's speak English. She has a teacher who is repairing porcelain. So I'll send the picture. I just took a screenshot of you with the thing. I'll send you
cool.
An email to her, and you can get in touch with her and through her to the master porcelain restorer in the capital of China.
Wonderful. And I think I also have to mention that this picture or the idea of it came from Peter Levine. You are probably aware of him, the founder of Somatic Experience. Yeah. I have to honor him here because he's doing such a great work in bringing trauma, into our awareness and working on it. So Peter Levine is someone you should know. He just turned to be 80 now. So these are the people.
And can you make sure that we have the the names and the quotes or that you mentioned in the thing? And this has been such a wonderful time this morning to wake up and have two conversations with you. It has been really, really great. Thank you so much for what you're doing and for what you've shared here. And I hope this is the first of many, many conversations, and that we can connect all of these things, the ecosystem restoration camps, the botanical sanctuaries, the art of soul making, soul integrity, the integrity for the future, all of these things come together so that together we can be strong and we can overcome the inertia which seems to be holding the civilization in such a tragic spiral of collapse. We can move to another more beautiful way where we're all happy and satisfied and doing what we need to do. So let's all choose to take the flourishing path. Thanks very much for what you're doing in the world and for joining us today. And thank you, Jason and Bob, for your contributions here too.
It was really nice to meeting you.
Really nice to meet you too.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation, and lovely to meet you. John, thank you as
Yeah,
always.
thank you, John.
Okay.
Have a lovely one. Bye.